God bless America. Hello, everybody. I am the Talk Radio Protege. This is the Protege program. Thank you for joining me. It's Friday. I'm ready for the weekend. I hope that you are as well. Looking forward to taking a couple of days off from having to be engrossed in the swamp. But there's just one more thing we have to do. We have to talk about the big news story of the day. Then it's the weekend. So hang in there. You're almost home. So, the big question of today, did Trump just sell his base down the river for the sake of illegal immigrants? That's what the headline from this AFP, a French news organization coming to you from via Yahoo, would have you believe. Trump proposes U.S. citizenship plan for 18 million undocumented immigrants. Now, before we get too deep into things, let's just have a look at this opening paragraph here. Okay, I hadn't even read that. I was reacting to the headline. New immigration plan to Congress that offers 1.8 million young unauthorized immigrants, known as Dreamers, a path to citizenship over 10 to 12 years. So right after, the headline is supposed to scare the crap out of you. You are supposed to freak out. You are supposed to call your congressman. You are supposed to lose your mind and abandon Trump when you see this headline. Trump proposes U.S. citizenship plan for 18 million undocumented immigrants. And then you get into the opening paragraph. You get beyond the headline, and it becomes obvious that Democrats are not going to go for this. And this is, in fact, a much more conservative plan than the headline would have you to believe. If you follow Rush Limbaugh, you might be familiar with this. There was some amnesty movements going on back in the 90s and the turn of the century, the 2000s, that Republicans tried to get Rush Limbaugh on board with. And Rush's response was, yeah, I'll sign on to amnesty if the illegal immigrants can't vote for 25 years. And even when these kind of limitations get placed on there, usually what Democrats do is they'll run to the microphone and say, how can we make these people citizens but not give them the right to vote? Now, if they can be in the country legally, but they can't become citizens for 10 years, that means they shouldn't be able to vote for 10 years. They shouldn't be able to collect welfare, Social Security, etc. for 10 years. That would be much better than the current amnesty situation where we just say, all right, you're all citizens. Now come in and do whatever you want. That's obviously hasn't been working. It obviously doesn't work. This would be a much better solution. But you're not supposed to get past the headline. Now, my silly self not going past the headline, I already planned out a lot of commentary. One thing that I would like to remind everyone before, after you've lost your mind over the headline, before we continue to go on through this story, is that this is not the first time that Trump has floated a plan for illegal immigrants. I almost fell for the rhetoric. Illegal immigrants that is not just flat deportation. Just in case you're confused as to what I'm trying to say, in a meeting or in a live interview with Sean Hannity in front of a live audience, Donald Trump and Hannity somewhat together floated the idea of, wait a minute, this isn't the right story. That's very upsetting. I apologize. I didn't even check to make sure that that was the right story. Good gosh. Well, anyhow, if you are following I have the right website. It is on Real Clear Politics that you can find the video and the transcript. It was back in August of 2016. Hannity and had Trump on for a live interview. They had a live audience, and they talked about immigration. And on two different occasions, Hannity and Trump asked the audience, should we work to help the illegal immigrants? And the audience applauded and cheered. So this is not the first time that this is coming up. And Trump does not get elected in 2016 if his immigration policy is just amnestize the so-called dreamers. So that's what I wanted to point out as we moved into this discussion. And you can see that the citizenship is not as simple as amnesty. It's a 10 to 12 year path to citizenship, which means that these people are potentially not voting in 2 presidential elections, and that turns into however many, 5 or 6 midterm elections that these illegal immigrants are not voting in. Other details of the plan are that Congress will eliminate the diversity lottery immigration program, and when I read severely restrict family immigration, I believe that is obliterating chain migration. So what the view of conservatives is that the family unit is very good for society. So when one person immigrates from another country, we want them to bring their nuclear family with them. We want them to immigrate. Now that means spouses and minor children. But what has been happening, as we've discussed on this channel previously, is chain migration means if I immigrate, I get to bring my wife, my children, my parents, my brothers and sisters, their children, my grandparents. My grandparents then get to bring in their children, and their children get to bring in their brothers and sisters, and they all get to bring in their kids. And it's a never-ending chain. That's why it's called chain migration. Now, under the nuclear family immigration system, one member of a family unit would get to bring in their spouse and minor children. So at least that's the plan that's outlined in, I think they say as much in this story. Maybe not, but another thing that we might be getting with this plan is $25 billion, called it a trust fund for constructing a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. Now, that is putting U.S. appropriations law into layman's speech. The way that U.S. appropriations law is supposed to work, I've done a little bit of training on this, is that when the government decides it's going to spend money, it takes the money from the U.S. Treasury, or since we're always spending deficit money, wherever that money actually is, takes that money and it puts it over here in this spot. And because it put that money in this spot, means that that money can only be spent on the stuff that Congress decided it could be spent on. Now, government agencies do that on a smaller scale in their day-to-day operations. An agency will decide, okay, we've got this pot of money, and we're going to take this piece, and we're going to spend it on this discrete thing, this very specific thing. That's called an appropriation. Now, the way that Congress would set aside $25 billion for the wall is to make an appropriation. But to use the words trust fund is putting it in layman's terms so that people will understand that that's what Trump is trying to get. Now, in order to get a $25 billion appropriation from Congress, we're going to have to do some budget stuff, which means 60 votes. And because we must get 60 votes to spend $25 billion, the price that Trump is putting forward as being willing to pay at this moment is a path to citizenship for 1.8 million illegal immigrants. That's the trade that Trump is proposing making. Let's see if we can get any other details from here. I think that is the last detail about the plan. We do get a few lines from Democrats throughout this story. So from Democrat Senator Brian Schatz, He says there's no public policy justification for cutting legal immigration in half. Now, to that point, I would say there's no public policy justification for maintaining legal immigration at its current level. In fact, there's a societal imperative to cut legal immigration to negligible numbers, if not zero, because we have millions upon millions, probably hundreds of millions of people living in the United States of America that are not living as Americans. They are whatever culture they've brought in with them from wherever they came from. It's called multiculturalism. It's something that needs to die. And it's something that the Democrats will not let go, because as the more multicultural our country remains, the easier it is to put people in boxes and control them, because you're in this box, and therefore we know exactly what to say to pander to you and get your support. That's what identity politics is. That's what multiculturalism is a thing of identity politics. Now, according to this story, this plan represents a sharp shift in U.S. immigration policies. Now, as the media observed that Trump was totally against immigration, there would be zero amnesty. There might even be zero immigration once Trump got done. And that's how they characterized it, so that they could characterize Trump as xenophobic and bigoted and racist, blah, 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 blah. But for anybody that was paying attention outside of CNN, MSNBC, Trump always left the door open to do something with the illegal immigrants that was not straight up deportation. That's always been on the table. And I think that hardcore supporters of Trump will remember this. I think there's some people that weren't on the Trump train from the beginning that will not remember this. You might remember there were many conservatives that freaked out when they saw the meeting, the infamous televised 55-minute immigration meeting a couple weeks ago. Tucker Carlson was one such individual that asked, why did Trump even run if he was just going to flop on immigration like this? Well, 2 weeks after we had that meeting, the Republicans won their first government shutdown in decades. That's very significant. If this proposal by the president were to produce something similar, I guarantee you, not only would the Democrats work harder to keep the government shut down longer, because they caught a lot of flack for allowing the government shutdown to expire after 8 hours. I'm calling it 8 hours because over the weekend doesn't count. The Democrats would work harder to keep the shutdown going longer, and that just means that the Republicans would win bigger, because Trump is showing a willingness to negotiate throughout this. He hasn't buckled on his key issues. He still wants money and a commitment to the wall. He still wants an end to chain migration, and he still wants an end to the diversity lottery system. Remember, go all the way back, just 2 or 3 weeks ago to that 55-minute meeting. And what did I point out to you that Trump said, this must be in the plan? Before he said, I'll sign what you send me, he said, we must end the diversity lottery, we must end chain migration, and we must act on the border wall. He said it in border security, but one of his border security elements that had to be in the bill that he signed was moving forward with the wall. And those three elements remain in the proposal that proposes to give a path to citizenship to 1.6 million illegal immigrants over the next 10 years, is that there must be action on the wall, we must end the diversity system, and we must end chain migration. All three of those items have remained in every proposal thus far. So when people hear that we're talking about amnesty, we're talking about path to citizenship, when people hear rumblings about that, one of the things that they're forgetting is that there's action on the way that Diversity in Comics, as an ex-military person, says it, is action on the objective. The objective is reducing the flood of immigration. And we're getting 3 for the price of 1. 3 things that will reduce the flood of immigration for the price of 1 thing that will threaten to increase illegal immigration. Now, the way that amnesty tends to affect things is that whenever there's talk of amnesty, illegal immigration increases. If we're able to specifically define the illegal immigrants that will be amnestized with this as specifically being able to prove that you were in the country before say 2017, then that could be something useful. That could be something that would not be as damaging as other things. The Trump administration's general attitude on immigration has sharply reduced the numbers. Once this talk of amnesty stops, I think we'll see those numbers reduce back down to the levels that they were before there were rumblings that there might be amnesty. Now, if amnesty is to happen, we're probably going to see more illegal immigration. But the reason that I'm talking about all this, the reason that I went off into the weeds so deep in this, is because I want to point out how much different this plan appears to be from the previous 7 amnesties passed by Congress. You can read about them at Numbers USA. And I just want to show you what they are. We had 1986, 1994 twice, 1997, 1998, 2000 twice. The most balanced of these amnesties was number 1, and surprisingly, amnesty number 1 was the amnesty that flipped Carolina permanently into a blue state. Or not Carolina, California. Excuse me. Amnesty number 1 had some border security provisions within it as an attempt to balance. Now, obviously, it didn't do enough. It included sanctions for employers that hire illegal aliens, increasing in border controls, and a program to verify the immigration status of aliens applying for certain welfare benefits. Obviously, that did not work to stop the amnesty. And the future versions of amnesty have only served to embolden future illegal immigrants, because as we've continued to do amnesty, it's gotten more and more lenient. This version of amnesty could be the most strict version of amnesty that we've ever seen. And I repeat, it does contain actions on the objective. Now, I got a little bit out of order here, but I did cover all of my talking points. When you're talking to people about this immigration plan, when you're trying to reason within yourself of how you feel about this immigration plan, remember, this is something that was on the table during the campaign. People voted for Trump in spite of knowing that the door was open to illegal aliens not being deported. Some of them, not all of them, because many of them have been deported, and criminal aliens being deported being amnestized has never been something that's on the table. But amnesty for some has always been on the table. This proposal in its current form contains actions on the objective of reducing immigration and allowing for assimilation. The third point is also, remember that the meeting, the immigration meeting that had so many people biting their nails, worrying about what was about to happen, all resulted in a Republican victory in the form of winning the shutdown. So this may not actually be something that Trump wants to act on. It might just be something that he's putting out there as in an effort to be seen as reasonable. The Democrats thus far, in my opinion, have come off as very unreasonable. They're very unwilling to work with anybody on this. They don't want to bend to even... This is de facto amnesty for 1.8 million illegal immigrants. It's what the Democrats want. but they're not willing to trade anything for this amnesty. They want clean amnesty. They want a clean DACA bill, the way that Dianne Feinstein put it. But they're not going to get that. They are not going to get that. Chuck Schumer has already said that we need to do a clean budget with no immigration dealings whatsoever. And that means that he wants to put the immigration fight off to another time. There are many Democrats that want to make the budget fight about immigration, but I believe it was Chuck Schumer that said, let's put immigration off and do a budget, which would be a win for Republicans. Anything that puts off amnesty or even this proposal, if we were to actually get this action on the objective now, and that's important, if this bill amnestizes the illegal immigrants in the future and acts to stop illegal immigration and to slow immigration now, that's the reverse of the way things have been. We used to have immigration now, action on the objective of slowing down illegal immigration later. This plan seems to reverse that, which is what conservatives want. Restrictions on immigration and stopping of illegal immigration now and amnesty later. So I just wanted to talk about that. I think it's something that people are going to get in a tizzy over. There's going to be a lot of sound bites coming up tonight and over the weekend of liberals probably thinking that they've won the immigration debate already. Conservatives wondering what on earth is going on, what's Trump doing. And I'm here to tell you, wait and see. Wait and see. This bill is better than the immigration hawks think it is. You know, Ted Cruz has already apparently had a cow over this. But this bill is not as bad as previous amnesty bills have been. Amnesty is bad, but this bill that has amnesty in it does much, much more than just amnesty. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you'll leave a like and subscribe if you did. Make sure you hit the bell for notifications and come back. Join us again on Monday. We'll be talking about more stories, more issues as they unfold. So until then, have a fantastic weekend, everyone. Good night, and God bless.